independent autopsy, this right here, which we're about to get into, of this Mississippi teen, could not determine how he died. The findings were announced today at a press conference held by Nolan's parents and their attorney, Ben Crump. The preliminary report concluded that both Nolan's cause and manner of death remain undetermined pending further investigation. Now, Crump also said the report doesn't rule out the possibility of foul play. There were, I will tell you, a few findings that stood out. For example, the report describes this area of red discoloration at the back of Nolan's head. Its cause is unknown. Pathologists said the finding is significant enough for further investigation. The report also found no fractures, no deep tissue injuries. It also makes clear that there were important limitations to this examination because this was a second autopsy performed after the state of Mississippi had already completed its own examination. And the pathologist, indicated that certain parts of Nolan's body were missing, namely pieces of Nolan's throat. So therefore, according to Crump, you can't rule out injuries to the neck. According to this, the pathologist also didn't have toxicology results, noted that the level of the body's decomposition, all complicating a definitive conclusion as to what happened to Nolan. And by the way, the results from the state medical examination haven't been released. The coroner's office is apparently waiting the toxicology report there too. So what do we make from this? What does it tell us about that first examination? I want to go straight to...
A body is lying at the edge of the water, face down. So, the Gulf lapping quietly at his feet as if nothing happened. As if a young man's entire future hadn't just been swallowed whole by an island that should have been nothing more than a day trip. He wasn't supposed to be there alone. A bone is missing from his neck. Not misplaced. Not overlooked. Gone. The very structure that forensic scientists look for first when they suspect someone has been strangled, that delicate, floating bone that every living human being has, was not present when the second doctor opened the body bag. No explanation was given. No note was left behind. It simply was not there. Somewhere between the laughter of a summer afternoon and the silence of a shoreline discovery, a 19-year-old star athlete vanished, and the people who were supposed to bring him home came back without him. They came back with his phone. His phone, but not him. And when his family finally held that phone in their hands, entire portions of that day had been wiped clean. As if the afternoon on that island never existed at all. What you are about to hear will disturb you. Will frustrate you. It may even keep you up at night. Because the deeper you go into this case, the more questions pile up and the fewer answers emerge. 2 autopsies have been conducted on this young man's body. 2 separate medical examiners reviewed his remains. And still, no one can tell his mother how her son died. We want to be transparent with you before we go any further. This episode contains detailed discussions of autopsy findings, forensic pathology, the decomposition of a human body, and the circumstances surrounding the death of a young man. If you are sensitive to these topics, please take care of yourself first. We will be here when you are ready. For those of you who are new here, welcome to Unsolved Files. This is the place where we don't let cases go quiet. Where we don't accept undetermined as a final answer when a family is still waiting for the truth. If you believe that every life deserves a real investigation and every death deserves a real explanation, hit that subscribe button right now because this channel was built for you. And before we dive in, drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. We have viewers joining us from all over the world, and every single one of you is a part of this community. We see you and we are grateful you are here. Now, let's talk about Nolan Wells. Because someone knows what happened on that island. And we are not stopping until the truth surfaces, just like his body did. The 4th of July started the way it always does on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Warm air, open water, and nowhere else to be. For Nolan Wells and his group of friends, the plan was straightforward. A boat trip out to Horn Island. A day on the beach. Back home before dark. That is not what happened. At 9:56 in the morning, the boat left from a private dock in the Ocean Springs area. This is not an estimate. GPS data obtained from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources confirmed the exact departure time. The group was on the water and heading south toward the Gulf. 1 hour and 18 minutes later, at 11:14 a.m., the boat arrived at Horn Island. If you have never heard of Horn Island before this case, here's what you need to know. It sits roughly 10 miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast and falls under the Gulf Islands National Seashore, a federally protected stretch of barrier islands managed by the National Park Service. There is no staff on Horn Island. No drinking water. No shelter. No facilities of any kind. The National Park Service's own website states this plainly. There is also no cell service. If something goes wrong out there, you cannot call for help unless you are on the water with a radio or you get back to the mainland. The northwest tip of the island, where the group spent the day, is well known locally for its beaches. On a holiday weekend it draws crowds. People boat out, set up on the sand, spend the afternoon and head back before the sun drops. It is a routine trip for people who grew up on this coast. Nolan had been there before. The group settled in at the northwest tip. By most accounts, it was a normal afternoon. People on the water. Music. The kind of 4th of July that does not make the news. For several hours, nothing about the day was unusual. Then came approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the last moment Nolan Xavier Wells was confirmed to be alive. The group began preparing to leave. And this is where the timeline fractures into two accounts that cannot both be true. According to Nolan's friends, he chose to stay behind. Their explanation, relayed to Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter, was that Nolan had been talking to a young woman on the island and decided to remain with her rather than return on the boat. They said he told them he would find his own way back. The young woman they were referring to is identified as Katie. And Katie's account is the direct opposite of what the friends described. Katie stated that Nolan told her he was getting back on the boat with his friends. She did not believe he was planning to stay. She assumed the people telling him to leave would not actually leave without him. They did. There is also a detail that surfaced publicly through Ben Crump's legal team. A video filmed on Snapchat by someone on Horn Island that day captured what appears to be a confrontation near the boats. A voice on that video, which Ben Crump's team believes belongs to Nolan, can be heard saying, "Give me my phone, what are you doing?" Mississippi Today reviewed this video and confirmed its existence. Investigators have not publicly explained what the video shows or who is involved. It has not been officially attributed. But it exists and authorities have been made aware of it. What is confirmed is that Nolan was not on the boat when it left Horn Island. Approximately 1 hour after Nolan stayed behind, at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a distress call was placed to Sea Tow, a private marine towing company. The audio from that call was obtained by NBC News through a public records request. On the recording, the caller reports that the boat is taking on water due to a bilge pump failure. The Sea Tow dispatcher asks whether everyone on board is in good health. The caller confirms that everyone is accounted for and okay. Nolan Wells was not on that boat. Sea Tow's records show their involvement concluded shortly after the call. The vessel owner contacted them again and stated that help had already been obtained through another source. Sea Tow stood down. At 4:31 p.m., the boat departed Horn Island. GPS data shows it was towed approximately 3 miles before it resumed traveling under its own power. That means a boat that had just reported a bilge pump failure serious enough to warrant a distress call was operating independently within 3 miles of the island it had just left. At 5:44 p.m., the boat arrived back at the original private dock in the Ocean Springs area. 18 minutes later, at 6:06 p.m., the same boat left that dock again and traveled to Fort Bayou. It then returned to the original dock a second time. What followed has not been explained by anyone publicly. The boat, which had reported mechanical failure hours earlier, sat at that dock for approximately 1 hour and 13 minutes. 73 minutes. A vessel that had taken on water, required towing assistance, and made multiple trips across the water that evening, was simply docked. Sitting. For over an hour. It was eventually placed onto a trailer and moved by vehicle. No one has publicly accounted for what happened during that window. The day moved on. The sun went down. And Nolan Wells did not come home. At approximately 11 o'clock that night, Christine Wansley received a phone call from one of Nolan's friends. The message was that Nolan had not returned from the island. That was how she found out. A phone call. Hours after the boat had already docked. Christine immediately reached out to Tashima Hands, the mother of one of Nolan's friends who had been on the trip. Tashima's sons, also friends of Nolan's, opened Snapchat to check his location. What they found did not make sense. The location Snapchat was showing for Nolan did not match the location that Life 360, a separate location tracking app, was showing for the same account at the same time. 2 different platforms. 2 different locations. Same person. That discrepancy has never been publicly addressed or explained by investigators. At midnight, Christine Wansley walked into the Jackson County Sheriff's office and formally reported her son missing. So here is where the day stands when the clock rolls past midnight into July 5th. GPS records confirm when the boat left and when it arrived. They confirm multiple trips after a reported mechanical emergency. The boat's movements are documented. What is not documented is what happened to Nolan between 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when he was last seen alive, and the moment his mother filed that missing persons report 9 hours later. Two people who were both present on Horn Island that day have given accounts of Nolan's last known conversation that directly contradict each other. A video exists that may show a confrontation involving Nolan, and it has not been officially explained. A distress call went out from a boat Nolan was not on, and that boat continued operating for hours after the call. A phone left on the mainland has no digital record of the day, and a location discrepancy between two separate apps has gone unaddressed. Every one of those threads is still open. What comes next is the search, the agencies that mobilized, the volunteers who took to the air, and what they found at the shoreline of Horn Island on the morning of July 6th. Christine Wansley did not sleep that night. Before any agency had formally mobilized, before a single press release had been issued, Elmore Wansley was already moving. Early on the morning of July 5th, Nolan's father got on a boat and headed out to Horn Island himself. He brought Nolan's football coach with him. The two of them searched the island on their own. They found nothing. That is where the official response began to catch up. At 12:26 p.m. on July 5th, the U.S. Coast Guard Sector Mobile received a formal request for assistance from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. An urgent marine information broadcast was issued across the area. A Coast Guard helicopter was deployed and sent to search the waters around Horn Island. 5 minutes later, at 12:31 p.m., the Jackson County Sheriff's Office issued a formal missing persons press release. It described Nolan Xavier Wells as an 18-year-old black male, approximately 6 feet 1 inch tall, weighing 180 pounds, last seen on Horn Island on July 4th wearing blue swim trunks, no shirt and sunglasses. Christine Wansley was also making calls of her own. She reached out to the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer emergency response organization that operates across the Gulf South and has assisted in dozens of water searches. Brian Troshers, the vice president of the United Cajun Navy, confirmed that his organization deployed both boats and aircraft to assist in the search. His team flew aerial surveillance over the northwest tip of Horn Island and canvassed a substantial surrounding area. Troshers later stated publicly that after approximately 2 hours in the air, he noticed law enforcement vessels converging on the northwest tip of the island. His aircraft descended to get a closer look. The search effort that assembled over those 40-plus hours involved 5 separate agencies and organizations working the water simultaneously. The U.S. Coast Guard, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the National Park Service, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, and the United Cajun Navy volunteers. It was a significant coordinated response for a missing persons case on open water. On the morning of July 6th, a National Park Service ranger located Nolan's body at the shoreline of Horn Island. He was face down at the waterline, blue swim trunks, no shirt, no shoes. Brian Troshers, observing from the air, confirmed through a zoom lens that what initially appeared from altitude to be clothing on the upper body was not. Nolan was wearing only the swim trunks that matched the description in the missing persons report. Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind confirmed the identity through dental records later that day. Lind stated publicly that there were no immediately obvious external signs of foul play or trauma on the body. However, given the uncertain circumstances surrounding the death, Lind requested a full autopsy through the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. Gulf Islands National Seashore Superintendent Rick Clark confirmed the National Park Service was involved in the recovery of Nolan's body. He did not answer questions about whether Horn Island had been actively patrolled on July 4th. The search was over. The investigation was just beginning. When the family finally got Nolan's phone back, they were expecting answers. What they found instead was silence. Nolan's phone had been on the boat the entire time. When the group left Horn Island without him, the phone left with them. That means Nolan spent his final confirmed hours on an island with no cell service, no way to call for help, and no communication device. The phone was not lost. It was not damaged. It was on the mainland while he was not. Tashima Hands, the mother of one of Nolan's friends, retrieved the phone and brought it to Christine Wansley. The family says it took approximately 15 minutes to get the phone after they arrived to collect it. That detail has been noted but not formally investigated as suspicious by authorities. When Christine went through the device, she found nothing from July 4th. No Snapchat photos. No videos. No posts. No documented activity from the entire day. For anyone who knew Nolan Wells, that absence stood out immediately. He was known among friends and family as someone who captured almost everything at social gatherings. Snapchat was his primary platform. His account had regular activity leading up to that day. Then the 4th of July arrived and the record simply stops. Here is the important technical point. Taking a photo on a smartphone does not require a cell signal or an internet connection. Images are captured and stored directly to the device's camera roll regardless of whether the phone has service. If Nolan took photos that day, they would have saved locally to the phone. If there are no photos on the phone from July 4th, one of two things is true. Either no photos were taken, or photos existed and were removed. Heather Barnhart is a digital forensics expert with Celebrite and the SANS Institute, and the co-author of Practical Mobile Forensics in its 4th edition. Speaking publicly about digital evidence in cases like this one, Barnhart explained that deletion is not the same as disappearance. Not from a forensic standpoint. Every time someone interacts with a phone, a log is created. Unlocking the screen creates a log. Powering the device off creates a log. Even touching the screen without unlocking it creates a trace. A full forensic file system acquisition, the kind that trained investigators conduct, can recover content that has been deleted and even content the user believed was permanently gone. On an iPhone, deleted photos sit in a dedicated recovery folder for approximately 30 to 40 days before they are fully purged from the system. On an Android device, that recovery window can be as short as 1 to 7 days depending on usage. This means the time between when that phone was last in Nolan's hands and when it was placed into the hands of forensic investigators is not just relevant. It is potentially one of the most important variables in this entire case. Retired FBI Special Agent Kieran Ramsey, speaking to News Nation, added another layer to the digital picture. Ramsey confirmed that deleted Snapchat data does not simply vanish. It leaves recoverable layers within the device's file system. He also noted that Snapchat retains geolocation data tied to account activity. If that data survived long enough to be captured by a forensic acquisition, investigators could potentially reconstruct a detailed map of where that phone was at every point between 9:56 in the morning when the boat left the dock and the moment it returned to the mainland without Nolan. That is not speculation. That is standard digital forensic capability, confirmed by a former federal agent. Then there is the video. A Snapchat video that was filmed on Horn Island on July 4th was reviewed by Mississippi Today and referenced publicly by Ben Crump and his legal team. The video was filmed from a boat and pans across other vessels and a sandbar where people were gathered. On the audio, a voice can be heard saying, "Give me my phone, what are you doing?" Ben Crump's legal team stated publicly that they believe that voice belongs to Nolan Wells. As of the time this documentary was produced, investigators had not publicly confirmed or denied that attribution. They have not explained the context of the video or identified who is involved. What is confirmed is that the Jackson County Sheriff's Office requested original, unedited photos and videos from July 4th specifically depicting alleged altercations or images believed to include Nolan Wells. That request came directly from investigators. It confirms that a potential confrontation on Horn Island is an active line of inquiry, not just social media speculation. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter confirmed publicly that the FBI is assisting with digital evidence examination in this case. He described the collaboration as standard procedure given that Horn Island is federal land. The FBI also confirmed separately that it is investigating interstate threats received by individuals connected to the matter, though it did not identify who received those threats. Ben Crump's legal team confirmed that a joint forensic examination of Nolan's phone is planned between the family's investigators and law enforcement. That examination had not been completed or released as of the time this video was produced. Every question in this case eventually leads back to that phone. What it recorded. What it did not record. What may have been on it. And what a forensic acquisition will or will not be able to recover. Before we get into the autopsy findings, take 30 seconds right now and drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think the phone forensic results are going to show? Because when those results come out, Unsolved Files will be the first channel to break it down in full detail just like we are doing right now. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button. Turn on notifications. This case is still moving and the next update will land on this channel the moment it breaks. Do not miss it. The body of Nolan Xavier Wells was recovered from the shoreline of Horn Island on the morning of July 6th. Within 24 hours, it was on an examination table. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office conducted the first autopsy on July 7, 2026. That examination was performed at the Coast Lab facility. As of July 22, 2026, the results of that autopsy have not been publicly released. The office is awaiting toxicology results, which is standard procedure. Toxicology screening takes time. It is not unusual for results to require several weeks. The script notes this without editorializing. The delay is procedural. What matters is that the official findings, including whether water was present in the airway and what the full internal examination revealed, remain sealed inside that process. Because the family did not have access to those results, and because they had concerns about relying solely on a single examination conducted by state officials, they commissioned their own. The independent autopsy was conducted in Washington, D.C. by Dr. Roger A. Mitchell Jr. Dr. Mitchell is a board-certified forensic pathologist. He served as the chief medical examiner for Washington, D.C. and currently holds the position of president of the National Medical Association. He is not a peripheral figure in forensic pathology. He is one of the most credentialed examiners in the country. The examination was privately funded. Colin Kaepernick has been publicly reported as one of the contributors to funding that independent examination. Dr. Mitchell released his preliminary findings on July 19, 2026. 3 days later, on July 22, Attorney Ben Crump presented those findings publicly alongside Christine Wansley and Elmore Wansley at the 117th NAACP National Convention in Chicago. That press conference was the first time the public heard what a second set of forensic eyes had found when they examined Nolan's body. The headline finding was this: both the cause of death and the manner of death were classified as undetermined, pending further investigation. That classification is not a conclusion. It is a statement that the available evidence, under the conditions in which the second examination was conducted, did not allow Dr. Mitchell to determine how Nolan died or whether another person played a role. The reasons for that limitation are specific, documented, and worth understanding one by one. The first finding involves a physical discovery made during the examination itself. During a posterior dissection of the head and neck, Dr. Mitchell identified a focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissue overlying the occipital bone. The occipital bone is the bone at the lower back of the skull. The discolored area measured 12 inches by 8 inches. It was located deep in the musculature beneath the skin surface. There were no lacerations on the skin above it. There were no fractures in the skull beneath it. Dr. Mitchell described the finding as significant enough to include in the preliminary report but inconclusive for establishing a perimortal injury, meaning an injury occurring around the time of death, due to the advanced state of decomposition the body had undergone by the time it reached him. Dr. Kendall Crowns, the chief medical examiner of Tarrant County in Fort Worth and a lecturer at the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU, provided forensic context for what that finding could mean. According to Dr. Crowns, there are at least 3 possible explanations. Decomposition itself can cause reddish discoloration in deep muscle tissue as the body breaks down. Blood can pool in dependent areas of the body after death based on positioning during transport. Or the discoloration could represent a pre-death injury to that area. Without access to detailed photographs of the dissection and without the anterior neck structures that were retained by the state, Dr. Crowns confirmed that no definitive answer is possible at this stage. That brings us to the second and arguably most significant finding. When Nolan's body arrived in Washington, D.C. for the independent examination, a specific set of internal structures was not included with the remains. The trachea was absent. The laryngeal cartilage was absent. The thyroid cartilage was absent. The thyroid horn was absent. And the hyoid bone was absent. Dr. Mitchell noted that this kind of retention by an initial examiner is a recognized practice in forensic pathology. When there is concern about possible neck compression, pressure, or injury, the structures of the anterior neck are sometimes removed and sent separately to a forensic anthropologist who can examine them under magnification for microfractures and other trauma that would not be visible to the naked eye. Dr. Mitchell explicitly stated he was not alleging wrongdoing in the retention of those structures. He acknowledged it as a plausible procedural explanation. But here is what that absence meant for the second examination. Without those structures, Dr. Mitchell could not independently rule out a neck injury as a contributor to or cause of Nolan's death. The hyoid bone deserves specific attention because it is the structure that carries the most investigative weight in cases like this. It is a small, curved bone that sits in the throat. It is the only bone in the human body that does not connect to any other bone. It floats in position, held in place by surrounding muscle and tissue. Because of its location and its isolated structure, it is one of the first things forensic pathologists examine when the circumstances of a death are unclear. Its condition, whether intact or fractured, can provide critical information. In this case, it was not available for the second examination. The third limitation involved the lungs and airway. Because the organs had already been dissected during the state autopsy on July 7, Dr. Mitchell could not examine the lungs and airway in their original undisturbed condition. This is significant because the presence or absence of water in the airway is a primary indicator in cases where drowning is a suspected cause of death. That determination cannot be made independently by the second examination. It rests entirely on what the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office found on July 7th, and those findings have not been released. Dr. Mitchell's stated conclusion was precise. The central question in this case is not where Nolan's body was found. It is what his condition was before he entered the water. Whether he was conscious, whether he entered voluntarily. What happened to him in the hours between 3 o'clock in the afternoon when he was last seen alive and the moment his body reached that waterline? Those are the questions that a final cause and manner of death determination will ultimately depend on. And as of July 22, 2026, none of them have been answered. On the same day Nolan's body was recovered, Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter stood before cameras and delivered the first official statement about the investigation. His position was clear. His detectives were interviewing people who had first-hand interactions with Nolan on July 4th, and at that point, no foul play had been identified. That was July 6th. 1 week later, on July 13th, Sheriff Ledbetter gave an update. The investigation was active and ongoing. Approximately 60 witnesses had been interviewed by that point. The 3 friends who traveled with Nolan on the boat to Horn Island had been interviewed in depth. Public tips had been coming in and Ledbetter described them as productive. He confirmed that the FBI was now assisting with digital evidence examination in the case. He also stated that this kind of federal collaboration was not unusual given that Horn Island sits on federal land and the 2 agencies regularly work together in that jurisdiction. What Ledbetter did not do at either of those press conferences was answer the specific questions the public and the family were asking. He did not explain the boat's movements after 4 p.m. He did not address the conflicting accounts between Katie and Nolan's friends. He did not speak to the location discrepancy between Snapchat and Life 360. He acknowledged the investigation was moving. He did not say where it was going. One detail from the sheriff's office communications stands out and deserves direct attention. In their public requests for information, investigators specifically asked for original, unedited photos and videos taken on the northwest tip of Horn Island on July 4th, and they were particularly interested in footage depicting alleged altercations or images believed to include Nolan Wells. That language came directly from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. It was not put there by media speculation or social media commentary. Investigators themselves used the word altercations. That means a potential confrontation on Horn Island that day is not a fringe theory. It is an active line of inquiry being pursued by the people running this investigation. Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath added another layer to the legal picture. She confirmed publicly that once the investigation reaches its conclusion, the matter will go before a grand jury, which will determine whether any charges are warranted. That statement is significant for one specific reason. It means the evidentiary threshold for charges has not yet been reached, but the mechanism for reaching it is already in place. No arrests have been made. No charges have been filed. But the pathway to both exists and is being actively maintained. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves eventually broke his public silence on the case. He stated that he had not seen any fact or piece of evidence that suggested foul play had occurred, and he expressed confidence that local law enforcement and the district attorney's office would handle the matter appropriately if evidence of a crime emerged. It is worth noting that Governor Reeves made that statement before the independent autopsy findings from Dr. Roger A. Mitchell Jr. were released to the public on July 22. His assessment was based on whatever information was available to him at that point in the investigation. The FBI's involvement in this case covers 2 separate and confirmed tracks. The first is the examination of digital evidence, which Sheriff Ledbetter confirmed and which connects directly to the forensic review of Nolan's phone and the other digital material collected during the investigation. The second track was confirmed by the FBI itself. The agency stated publicly that it is investigating interstate threats that were received by individuals connected to this matter. The FBI did not name who received those threats. Several people connected to the case have stated publicly that they have been threatened. Reverend Al Sharpton held a press conference and stated plainly that the circumstances surrounding Nolan's death did not add up and that the case warranted serious scrutiny. Attorney Ben Crump, in explaining the family's decision to pursue an independent autopsy and retain outside legal counsel rather than rely solely on local authorities, cited Mississippi's documented history directly. He referenced the 1955 murder of Emmett Till, a 14-year-old black boy killed in Mississippi whose case was mishandled by local authorities for decades. He referenced the killings of civil rights workers in Mississippi in the 1960s. His point was not that history repeats itself in every case. His point was that Christine Wansley and Elmore Wansley grew up with the knowledge of that history, and it shaped the decisions they made about how to protect their son's case. Investigators have not announced any evidence of a racial motive in Nolan's death. That distinction matters, and this documentary does not conflate the two. What Mississippi's history explains is why this family made the choices they made. It does not determine what happened on Horn Island. Only the evidence can do that. And the evidence is still being gathered. More than 2 weeks after Nolan Xavier Wells was found at the shoreline of Horn Island, here is exactly where this case stands. Not in theory. Not in speculation. In confirmed, documented fact. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office conducted the first autopsy on July 7, 2026. As of July 22, those results have not been released. Toxicology is still pending. The official cause of death has not been determined. The anterior neck structures retained by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office, the trachea, the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone, have not been independently examined by any pathologist outside of the state system. Dr. Roger A. Mitchell Jr. could not access them for the second examination. Their findings remain inside the state process. Whether water was present in Nolan's airway has not been independently confirmed or ruled out. That determination belongs entirely to the state autopsy. And the state autopsy has not been released. The conflicting accounts of Katie and Nolan's friends about what was said on that beach before the boat departed have not been publicly resolved. Investigators have not stated which account is supported by the witness interviews conducted across 60-plus people. Both versions remain on the table. The boat's movements on the afternoon and evening of July 4th have not been publicly explained. The distress call to sea tow. The multiple trips after reported mechanical failure. The 1 hour and 13-minute gap at the dock before the boat was trailered and moved. None of it has been addressed in any official statement from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. The complete digital forensic examination of Nolan's phone has not been released. The joint examination plan between Ben Crump's legal team and investigators had not been completed as of the time this video was produced. The Snapchat video in which a voice believed by Crump's team to belong to Nolan can be heard demanding his phone has not been officially attributed or addressed by the Jackson County Sheriff's Office in any public statement. No arrests have been made. No charges have been filed. No official determination of cause or manner of death has been issued by any authority. 8 open questions. 0 official answers. That is where this case stands right now. This case is not over. The toxicology results are coming. The grand jury process is waiting. The phone forensic examination is planned. Every single one of those developments will be covered here on Unsolved Files in full detail the moment they break. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so the next video finds you directly. And before you go anywhere, drop a comment below. Tell us what you think happened on Horn Island on July 4th. And tell us where in the world you are watching from right now. Here is what we know for certain. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old. He was a wide receiver with a season ahead of him, a family behind him, and by every account from the people who knew him, a young man who gave more than he took from every room he walked into. On the morning of July 4, 2026, he got on a boat with people he knew and headed out to Horn Island to celebrate a holiday. That afternoon, that same boat came back without him. 2 days later, a National Park Service ranger found his body at the waterline of the same island. That is the beginning and the end of what is certain. Everything in between, what was said on that beach, what happened after the boat left, how Nolan entered the water, and what his condition was when he did, remains unanswered. 2 autopsies have been conducted. A board-certified forensic pathologist with decades of experience examined his remains in Washington, D.C. and could not determine how he died. The state autopsy that was completed first has not been released. The forensic process is still running. The FBI is still examining digital evidence. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office is still building its investigation. And the grand jury process that District Attorney Angel Myers-McElrath described as the next step has not yet begun. This documentary does not declare what happened on Horn Island. The evidence does not support a declaration in either direction. What it supports is a set of verified, documented questions that have not been answered by anyone with the authority to answer them. Nolan was supposed to be at training camp the Monday after the 4th of July. He was preparing for a new season at Southwest Mississippi Community College. His teammates were expecting him back. Instead, his family spent that Monday planning a funeral. His memorial service was held on July 20, 2026 in Ocean Springs. His teammates attended. His coaches attended. His community came out. His father Elmore Wansley called him a silent leader. The kind of person others looked to without him having to ask for it. His mother Christine Wansley said the pain hits different. She said God took his time creating her son. His coach Jake Bramlett said his character spoke louder than his accomplishments. Those are not constructed descriptions. Those are the words of people who knew him before any of this happened. Ben Crump has stated publicly that this family will not stop until every fact about what happened on Horn Island is brought into the light. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, and the grand jury process will collectively determine whether that happens and what it looks like when it does. Until that day comes, the questions stay open. This is Unsolved Files. We will be here when the answers arrive. And when they do, this channel will cover every detail. Stay with us.